Hello. Today I'm with Dr. Dana McNeil, and I just love her spirit, her energy. She was an insurance adjuster at one time and had to deal with a lot of people's trauma. And she is a clinical psychologist now from San Diego, California. You can find her danamcneil.com. Welcome, Dana, Dr. Dana.
Hi, Larry. I'm so glad to be here. I love chatting with you. You are so fun, and you also have a wonderful energy. So that's probably why we hit it off so well.
Oh, it is. And I just got a California license. So I said, someday I dream about, at least working out there doing something. Um, so today we were brainstorming a bit before this, and we're talking about people pleasing. Ouch, what a subject. And sometimes I say you're actually pleasing other people to get your own anxiety to go away. Ooh, ouch, ouch, right? So could you talk a little bit about people pleasing, what it is, how people can watch out for it, and we'll move from there.
Well, sometimes a good place to start is to ask a couple of questions to help you see if you identify with some of the behaviors of what a people pleaser does. And so sometimes it's questions like, do you sometimes or often say yes when you really mean no? Or vice versa, you mean no and you feel sort of obligated to say yes. Are you in relationships and you feel like you can't end the relationships because they would be devastated, and so you have to make sure that they're okay? Or do you often feel like you're responsible for other people and you don't necessarily know that they appreciate all the things that you do for them, right? So if you're answering yes to some of those things, it's very possible that you have the need to please, right? And it typically is something that, unless you get some support around it, you have every reason to continue doing it. And so those of us that identify as people pleasers often have been doing this for a long time. It's something that you developed as a coping skill, honestly, when you were very young, because you needed to survive childhood, right? So
Yes.
you and I have talked sometime in the past about this idea of attachment injuries. And so
Yes.
when you grow up with parents or grandparents or whoever your parental figures are,
Mhm.
you're reliant on them for certain things. I can't make my own peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I can't drive myself to school. I can't give myself a hug when I fall down on the playground.
Mhm.
And so, depending on how your family of origin responds, it teaches you about how the world is going to show up for you or not show up for you. And so, because we have to get through childhood alive, we develop a maladaptive coping skill, which is sometimes if I make myself indispensable or I don't cause you any problems or I appear to make your life easier, then I will get the things that I need taken care of for me. And that is sort of what begins this people pleasing behavior. I
That's
rambled a lot
beautiful.
there. I hope that was
No, no, it was wonderful because I was, how we listen between the cracks as therapists, maladaptive. I want people to hear that word maladaptive because it's what we were talking about earlier, that you may be people pleasing to actually please yourself in disguise. And so address the skeptic who said, wait a minute, you said the need to please? I have a desire to please.
uh,
Such a
I
such a
I
shift.
call it, so I recently gave a webinar for the Gottman Institute, and I called it our way of trying to take stealth control. Because for those of us that identify as people pleasers, the concept that you have any control over what happens to you seems so offensive and like, oh no, Dana, you have gotten it completely wrong. I am there for everybody else. And so when I point out, you really are doing it unconsciously. I don't think anybody's
No.
purposely trying to do this, but there's belief that if I can make your life so wonderful, or you can't even imagine the idea of me not being in your life because it wouldn't be as comfortable, or you wouldn't receive as much love and care and concern, that I have found a way to make sure that you never leave me. And so,
Yes.
therefore, I have gained control because in my belief system, if I take that away from you, you won't be okay, that you will not feel as good about your life. And so, therefore, you are going to actually rely on me in ways that make me indispensable to you.
Ooh, yes. I hope somebody really got a hold of that because that is the core of what, codependency is a term that has evolved, and I think it's kind of devolved to blanket too much. But that is the number one symptom of codependency, is people pleasing in order to gain attachment to others. It's subconscious. So I want people to hear that: maladaptive and
Yeah.
subconscious. These are all subconscious things you usually learn in childhood. Perfect parents can teach you to people please. Just the kind of parents that say, you should be nice to everyone, give everyone a second chance. Well, not everyone needs
No,
a second
no.
chance. And some people need boundaries. So that's very difficult for people pleasers to say no. Um, how can you help them understand boundaries and saying no, and who you shouldn't give boundaries to and who you should give boundaries to? How can they do this?
So I think one of the main concepts that you need to be able to hear, understand, and embrace is I cannot simultaneously ask for my own needs and take care of your feelings. Right?
Wow.
Because that's what is the crux of the problem for people pleasers is I am so in your business about what you think about me that I'm so busy trying to manage or control the way that you view me. Again, this is not like a conscious thing that you're doing, but it's so important that you love me, that you appreciate me, that you respect me, that you agree with me, that I completely forget about my own needs. And I'm very worried that if I start asking for my needs, you're not going to be okay with them. And so therefore I shouldn't have them.
Oh, yes, self-denial. That is that in two words, that's what codependency is: denial, self-denial. You
Yeah.
just negate yourself in order to make everybody else happy. Wow. And you work with that often, I assume, because you're a relationship therapist.
Yeah.
So in couples counseling or marriage counseling, do you often see, I hit my microphone, do you often see people where one's primarily the giver and one primarily is the taker? You shook your head yes very
And
quickly.
the way that
Yes.
it shows up is so we in the Gottman method there's 50 different interventions or tools that we can use. And so one of the basic ones that I try to teach couples how to do is something called using a softened startup or asking for your needs essentially. And so there's a way of doing it that I talk about what my feeling is and what I would like to have happen differently moving forward. And so for the people pleasers that are in the relationship, when I say to you, hey, I just need you to ask your partner for what your need is, we're gonna frame it in a different way so that it's easier to hear. And they look at me with complete blankness, despair, overwhelm, like, what
Yes.
do you mean? And for me, that is the telltale sign that I have a people pleaser in my room, even if it's our first session. Because if you're so out of touch with what your needs are, that tells me that you've been spending all of your time navigating and exploring what somebody else's is.
Yes, and again, it's to please you and not exactly them. Do you feel like people think that if I am good enough and I do enough and I say enough and I do everything they want and need, they'll notice it and appreciate me? I think that's the core of a people pleaser. And actually the opposite is true if you're in love with a narcissist, or you think you're in love with a narcissist.
True. If our self esteem is not at the place where we think that we deserve the things that we want to have happen in life or our needs, again, this stealth, sort of passive aggressive way that we do it is I overdo for you. I show how indispensable I am to you. I work harder than you do to show you how much I care about you. And my hope is for all of that energy and time that you will notice how much better your life is and you will want to give it back to me. It's a very roundabout way of trying to get your needs met. And then what often happens is I'm doing all this stuff for you. You're not noticing. And then I have a huge explosion. Right?
That's it.
Sorry, there's a
Oh,
trash
that is
truck
the
going by.
codependent volcano right there. That's the codependent
Yes.
volcano.
And
That's the
so
lava that drives that volcano.
it's not that what you are asking for is not important. It's just that you've had this explosion, this volcano. And so all we're doing is we're looking at the explosion up in the sky and we're like, wow, that is big. What is that all about? And so then you apologize for it, right? And so instead of even like being, well, this is valid, I haven't been asking for my needs, this is what's happening because I've been stuffing it down, you then are apologetic and try to sweep away the volcano. And all you've done is given your partner mixed messages because I don't even know
Yes.
what's going on. The majority of us that have secure attachment styles, honestly, and please hear this, your listeners, we believe that people don't do things for ulterior motives. We believe that people do things because they want to do them for them. If I bake you a dozen chocolate chip cookies, Mary, I believe, if I'm a securely attached person, that you were making cookies and you thought it would be fun to give some to me.
Yes.
End of sentence.
Yes.
It
Not to
wasn't
garner
that,
some, yeah, not to
it
garner
wasn't, I'm
something.
going to bake you a dozen cookies so that you'll love me forever and I won't be alone. No, people don't think that. People pleasers do, but not those of us that have secure attachments. So when you then have this big explosion, you don't appreciate all the chocolate chip cookies that I've made for you. I'm like,
Right.
because
Because
you
you had an agenda to that?
you
Yes.
and why is the explosion? And then suddenly I'm like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have an explosion, because I get into my people pleaser's head and say, now I'm too much, you won't want me because now I'm going to be difficult to be around, or this is uncomfortable for you, let me clean it up and push my needs back in the corner. And
Yes.
your partner is thoroughly confused about what to do.
To feeling like too much or too little. Run with this sentence, Dr. Dana. There's a difference between needing to be needed and wanting to be wanted. Run with that.
A need is something like, I need oxygen so that I can breathe. I want a partner so that my life feels like it has more purpose, or it has additional parties or more opportunities for love. It isn't because if I don't have a partner, I won't be okay. I don't need to have a partner in order to breathe. I need oxygen. I want to have a partner because it makes my life more interesting.
I hope people heard that, because I think a lot of people take all the labels off, codependent, whatever it is. So many people feel like they can't survive unless they have someone. I mean, we have been, our culture, every culture is so full of, you must have someone to be a whole person, or the you complete me phrase, and all of those things we hear. But we can be happy as long as we have a good support group and system. And the Gottman Institute, in fact, and if no one knows how to spell, it's Gottman, and Dr. Dana
Yeah.
is a certified Gottman teacher. Do you call herself a teacher in that field?
So we're certified Gottman therapists, and then
Therapist.
I also train at the institute, so that's just an
Oh,
additional
great.
thing that I do.
Could you kind of give an intro, because I think people would love to know what you do through the Gottman Institute, because a lot of people are not familiar with that. I bring it in
Mm.
marriage
Yeah,
counseling sessions, and it really helps people for home. I give it to them for homework
sure.
too.
Yeah. No, so the reason that we therapists get so excited about the Gottman Institute, because if you're not a therapist, you're like, and what?
And what?
Right?
It's the
So
gold standard, right? Yes.
the reason that we get excited about the Gottman Institute is because when John and Julie started doing their research over 50 years now, which, couples therapy is sort of still in its infancy. It hasn't been around for that long. It wasn't valid as like a form of some kind of therapy that we would investigate. So they started investigating, what is it that makes a healthy relationship?
Mhm.
Right? Because most of us are not taught couples communication in high school. We're not learning it from our parents or from our grandparents or our neighbors. And so what they found is that the couples who were having successful relationships, that didn't get defensive with each other, that could handle getting into conflict and still be each other's best friend, and were able to navigate the trials and tribulations of life, that they were doing these behaviors that we called the masters of relationships, right? And
Yes.
they were handling it in a way that we all wanted to be, those of us that were the disasters of relationships. And so what John and Julie did is they took the behaviors that the masters were doing and they put them through clinical trials. And what we found is that couples who use these techniques that we teach at the Gottman Institute, they report the relationship is improved by 86%, which is
Wow.
what all of us want that are in relationships, because going into couples therapy is, as I tell the clinicians that work for me, it is a choice to be vulnerable. We are not entitled to that as couples therapists. And so
Correct.
I have to give you something that encourages you and motivates you to want to do the hard work of going to couples therapy, because it's not easy. I ask you to look at your own behaviors. I ask you to look at the me stuff versus the we stuff, and, try to do things in different ways than you've been doing them. So having the ability to say that I have an evidence-based type of couples therapy that will not just support you in this relationship, but will enhance all of your relationships. You have
Yes, it will.
siblings, you have coworkers, you have parents, you have people that you meet on the street. This is an investment in yourself because your communication is part of who you are with everyone.
Oh, it's so true. And that's why I love it, because it does trickle over. So we're going to put these two things that we talked about today together, because people pleasing, could could you tell the audience too what the four horsemen of the apocalypse of a marriage? You talked about what makes a marriage good. Now we're going to talk
Mm,
about what makes one bad.
yeah, so
It's a biblical
it
term, but they you use it in a different way.
Yeah, so what John and Julie found is in our research is that there's four patterns that are sort of the most prevalent, and when they are present in a relationship, they're the largest indicators that the relationship is not going to go well. And so we have four different ones. We have criticism, we have defensiveness, we have contempt, which is the most damaging, and something that John calls stonewalling, which is I'm sort of emotionally and physiologically shut down and I can't respond or be present to my partner.
It's the silent treatment on steroids.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said contempt is the most damaging, because that's what I was going to connect. People pleasers often blow up in a volcano, stuff it back down as we discuss, and then they develop contempt.
Yes.
These are the look at all I do for you, and this is the thanks I get person in that couple. The other person might look like the most culpable person that's making the relationship fail, but actually the contempt from the other one is feeding that. So explain why people pleasing is so darn dangerous in a couple, because it really is dangerous. It's like dynamite to a couple.
It's because, I mean, if I look at it from the receiving partner,
Mhm.
you're asking me to sign on with you in an agreement that I didn't know that I was participating in,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to give you this sense that you're living a life of purpose and meaning, and you're being a martyr for me, and you're taking care of my every need, and you're anticipating what I need, and you're walking on eggshells. And I thought I was just going to be with somebody that genuinely liked washing my socks or telling me that when we go out to dinner that you don't care where we go to eat, right? I thought you
Exactly.
were actually being who you were. I didn't realize that I'm not in a relationship with a real person. You've been withholding that from me to manage how I feel about you, and now you're mad at me that the management didn't go the way that you hoped.
Wow, thank you so very much for that. I hope that really sunk into somebody out there who's really suffering from that needing to be needed and wanting. Why don't you just how come they just don't know? I hear that a lot. He or she should just know what I want. People pleasers kind of know what you want, but they also deny themselves having anything they want, and that is very destructive. It does develop contempt. I mean, what do we call it when somebody doesn't show up for court? Contempt of court. They get judged. The gavel bangs down. It's like you need to show up in your personal life, your professional life, especially in your marriage and all your relationships. You need to show up, or contempt will happen. There'll be contempt for you because people go, wait a minute, this wasn't the real person I was with. That's beautifully put. Um,
And
and
they're often, I would say, those relationships are often not successful.
they're really not.
The people that come to me individually to work on their relationships have this pattern of like, I give so much, I'm the best partner that anybody could have, and yet none of my relationships are successful. And it sort of goes back to that same idea that I was just saying, but you sold me a bill of goods. I don't know who I'm in a relationship with. You're being a chameleon, trying to make yourself look like me because you think I'm in love with a mirror version of myself, instead of you're not letting me choose you. You're not letting me look at your faults and your flaws and the things that are not wonderful about you and say, you know what, that's all you got, I love you anyways. But what I'm getting is I'm getting a shell of a person who's too afraid to be themselves, to stand for something, to believe in something that I may disagree with, but that's where we get to choose to be in the relationship versus being
Yes.
managed to be in the relationship.
Yes, that's that desire part. You can desire to be, I mean, I genuinely don't mind doing laundry or things like that. People, if there's something you don't mind doing and you love it, it's okay. But if there's something you hate and the person you live with doesn't ever do it and you ask them to once and they don't do it, you keep doing it, it's okay to just be yourself and say, you know, I really hate this. Will you help me with this? It's not going, they're not going to notice you because you're so wonderful. They're going to notice you because you're so genuine. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. So boundaries. Now let's do discuss, because a lot of people are in relationships with people that if they don't people please, and that's the narcissist, the sociopathic types, if they don't people please, they're going to get in trouble. And eventually they need an exit strategy to get out of that relationship, most likely. But can you discuss about boundaries and people pleasing and why these blurred lines are so dangerous? Also, this is also another danger zone for people pleasers or boundaries.
So let's start by talking about what a boundary is, because I think sometimes my clients that are people pleasers don't know what that is or why it's important to have them, right? It just seems like something scary that they don't want to talk about. So, a boundary, I like to do this visual of, if I don't have healthy boundaries, I go to the beach, I take a stick, I draw a line in the sand, and then depending on who comes to visit me at the beach, I move it, I let them step across it, I erase it, the wave comes in and washes it away. It's not permanent, it's not meaningful, and it's confusing to everybody in my life,
Mm,
because depending on where we're at that day or how good our relationship is, I'm willing to make it movable. Right? If
yes.
I have healthy boundaries, I'm at the parking lot in the mall and we've painted the line on it and it doesn't move depending on who comes to visit me at the parking lot. Right? It's solid, it's steady, it does not change depending on what my environment is. And the reason that it is important to us as an individual, it does not matter how other people perceive it, which is another issue. It's so that my life makes sense, so that I
Yes.
am clear about what I stand for, what's okay with me, what's not okay with me. Because if I don't have the basis of who I am, something solid, clear, and tangible to me, when I'm in new relationship energy, when I'm scared that I'm going to lose somebody, when I'm in crisis, I will move my boundaries around because I haven't ever developed a strong sense of who I am. And that is not going to serve you. It is going to let the other person believe that because you did it one time or that you did it 25 times, that it is an ever moving target and they don't have to pay attention to it because they have the ability to determine whether or not you move it. And you've given all your power about what happens to you in life to somebody else who, as much as they love you, is going to be centered at the end of the day on what makes sense for them.
Yes, and if they are a narcissist and don't actually love you and you're in a trauma bond, they'll just rip that gate wide open.
Yeah.
They will, because it is like a gate, who you let in, who you let out. A boundary is all about safety. And I often talk to people and tell them you can say no without saying no. And you can, I use the old gratitude sandwich formula for that, is say, thank you for thinking that I would do that for you. I can't at this time, but thanks for thinking I could. If they don't get it, then I always tell them, thank you for understanding I'm not going to do that. I did not say no one time in there. It's a good place to start for someone who's really shaky. Like you said, the line in the sand, the blurry boundaries. It's a good place to start, but sooner or later, it's exhausting. You're just going to start to say no.
I think of those that are starting to work on having healthy boundaries as being like a pendulum, one of those old school pendulums. We had one at the Natural History Museum when I was growing up, and it would, like, when you don't have healthy boundaries, you're over here. No, everything's okay. Everything's about you. Let me make sure you're okay with me. And at first, it's going to feel awkward because in order for you to get it, you're going to have to be way over here on the other side. No, that's not okay with me. I don't like it. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going
Yes.
to feel scary. It's going to feel like nobody is going to love you anymore until you get comfortable being in the middle, and this
Yes.
beautiful thing happens, which is like my, pie in the sky that I want all of my clients to reach, whereas I can have a healthy boundary and have empathy for how it's going to impact you. It does not change my healthy boundary, but I am able to acknowledge that you are in discomfort. And those two things can simultaneously exist without me needing to fix your feelings.
So can you give an example on how somebody could do that? I mean, I know we can't tell
Sure.
who's
Like
favorite
if
type.
somebody's like, I want us to go on vacation to Rome this year. Yes, I know it's $8,000, but you can just, see some extra clients, Mary. You can like do 12 more episodes of your podcast. You can make it work,
Okay.
right?
That's
Because it's
yes,
like
that's what a people pleaser would do.
there's
I'll make it work. I will because I want you to like me and I want you to
and
go
I
to
want
Rome
you to
so
be
you'll be
happy, and
happy.
I know how much this is going to mean to you. And so when I'm in a healthy place,
When I
I can
really might want to
say,
go to Spain, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
there's that, what is it that you really want? So I would say start with short simple sentences, because if you don't, you're going to go down that rabbit hole where you try to get them to validate your perspective.
Of
And if you
defensiveness back to the Gottmans, you get, yeah, like defensive. Yeah.
absolutely, so I might say something like, wow, I can see why you'd want to go to Rome. You've always talked about it and it's something that sounds fun for you, and I don't see that happening this year.
Aha. What if they insist? You know, they
So
post those
here's the
boundaries.
difference though.
Yeah.
The next part is, if you're not giving me the sense that you're checking in with me because you want to understand me more deeply
Mhm.
and you want to respect my decision, but you want to have an understanding of it so that you can know me more deeply, versus you're just shoving up against me and you're a boundary pusher, then I have to decide how I'm going to respond based on how you come at me, or if you're coming at me with somebody that's genuine curiosity and warmth, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So if they say something like, "Oh gosh, it's not going to work out this year," oh, I'm so bummed. How come? Versus like, but you've always said that we could go to Rome, and I know that you can work more, because remember last year when your mom wanted to go on the cruise down the Mississippi River and you were willing to take on 6 more clients? Why were you willing to do it then, but you're not willing to do it for me now? That's a
Mm.
very different response. I'm going to
Yes.
choose how I respond based on which of those that I receive from my partner or from anyone in life.
Yes. So you and I both love neuroscience. I hope somebody listening actually felt the visceral reaction of that. The two examples that Dr. Dana gave us. That one is, oh, why not? And that's a bummer. And but they were accepting. That was acceptance. So
Yes.
you feel open, you feel heard, you feel like you're not voiceless. But the other one, you go again back to the Gottmans, you get on the defense. They're being offensive, you're going on the defense, which will create contempt. You feel criticized, and then you are almost forced to stonewall. And that relationship, even if it's just with friends, it's another of the four horsemen. This is why we like the Gottman Institute, because these four things are really important. And I'm just going to repeat them: the contempt, defensiveness, criticism, and stonewalling, which is the silent treatment on steroids, is how I put it, which people just shut down and say nothing.
Yeah.
So hopefully this helped people. Is there anything else you'd like to say about people pleasing and how destructive it can be, even neuroscientifically? I think it changes your brain. I honestly do. I was raised in that environment. I was raised where I had to be a people pleaser. Then I was in the entertainment industry for almost 30 years, and you go on stage and you're like, is everybody happy? There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. They call it giving a performance. I will tell you, show business people, everybody thinks they're narcissists. And like they're a bunch of little kids who never got heard, and they become other people or through
Yeah.
a song to be heard. And this is why you see them going in the hospital for exhaustion later in life, because they are literally exhausted from giving of their own emotions, from just draining out. And then people get in their personal lives. If they're really famous and get inside your, I mean, they'll just get inside of you. And a lot of them are closet people pleasers. I mean, this is
Yes.
why they wear sunglasses wherever they go. Like it's a shield. So
It's
how could
astonishing
you?
to me when I work with a lot of celebrities, and one of the things that I sort of universally see, which is always a bit of a head scratcher to me, is this sense that you owe it back to the people in your life that were in your life when you were younger to take care of them, because you've
Yes.
had the luck, and not just luck, but the hard work
Oh,
of
it's hard
making your
work.
career happen, right? I mean, luck is not something that accidentally happens. It's something
No.
that hard work eventually turns into. And it's so consistent in my clients that have had a modicum of success that suddenly when the other people in their world are showing up, the boundary offenders with their hands extended, asking for the handout, that there is no sense that you're allowed to say no. And it
Right.
is it's so hard for me to see that, well, let me just go out on the road more, or let me play another game, or let me do another season of this TV show that I'm overwhelmed because I got
Yes.
200 plus friends and family members on the payroll, and I need to make sure that I do this for them so that they're okay. And it's and none of them are checking in to make sure that that's
No.
something that they want to do, or that they're not feeling overextended and backing off on the request. You're right, celebrities and sports figures, and they are just some of the genuinely nicest people that I have
Yes,
ever
they are.
met.
Yes,
And
they are.
they are there for the people that were in their life. They give 100,000,000%.
They do. I'm so glad this is why I love organic conversations because you're in California and you do see celebrities. And I lived in Nashville, and used to work on the Kiss tour. And I'll tell you, I think I was a counselor even back then because I was doing makeup and wardrobe. And it's you're um in very close quarters with people who are just about to go on stage. They're very vulnerable at that
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Very vulnerable in their own way. There's not a bunch of narcissists out there. I think celebrities are the most misunderstood closet people pleasers in the world. This is what people make fun of them for liking award shows. They don't really get a whole lot of accolades.
No.
We build them up and we rip them down,
Remember,
especially
what was
about weight.
what year? I don't remember what year, but remember Sally Fields, you like
You
me,
like
you
me?
really, really like
Right.
me. And it's
We both know it.
that's how much celebrities are really worried that it's fleeting. And, the
Yes.
public is so fickle. And I'm betting all of my livelihood when I'm a celebrity that tomorrow you still like me.
Yes, that is I actually use that quote in my book because it many years later, it took her a long time to realize she didn't need an Oscar. She had to learn to like herself first. But yes, we liked her before she got an Oscar. She just didn't know it because she was insecure. And I don't know her, but I have read things about her childhood where her dad was kind of hard on her. So if you have parents that are difficult, or if you have siblings, marriages where people are difficult and they're difficult to please, just stop pleasing them. How can you tell people, just stop, make it stop? I actually tell people, I have a cell phone right here, it's turned off. I tell people to put a stop sign on their screensaver because this is usually the vehicle by which they hit, oh my gosh, I have to answer this. And then they get caught off guard with no boundaries and go,
Yes.
okay, I'll do it. I'll bake 1,000 pies. So how address that? Because I'm so glad this came up about celebrities. They suffer so much from people pleasing and that dynamic of difficult parents. Before we move on, Conan O'Brien said something. I remember crying when I saw it because I was very
Hmm.
entrenched in show business at the time. He did the daytime Emmys, and he said, we have to cut the speeches short. Nobody gets to thank their parents because if you had normal parents, you wouldn't be in show business. And he got a standing ovation, and people were laughing and crying simultaneously. I was too in my own living room. It was a daytime Emmys, and I said, he's got it. He's got this. He
Aw.
knows what he's talking about. I had not studied psychology yet. My dad was a psychiatrist, so I was still in rebellion to that. But talk to the people who feel like a celebrity in their own hometown, that go-to person in their own hometown, because that's exactly what people pleasers are. Call her or him. He'll do it for you. She'll do it for you.
So this might not be a perfect answer, but here's something that I tell my clients to do because I do it myself. I have a post-it note in the bathroom next to my toothbrush, and it says, it's none of my business what other people think of me. And so I
Aha.
look at it every morning while I'm brushing my teeth, and it's it's true. I have absolutely no control over what other people think of me. I
No,
don't. And so
none.
spending all of my energy chasing to get somebody to think that I'm okay, or to spend so much energy forward, future thinking about trying to make sure that everybody's happy with me, you will get to the point where you're exhausted, where there is that probably a relationship where you have thought every single thing out. You have overextended yourself to make sure that there's absolutely nothing that they can be uncomfortable with, and they will find something to be uncomfortable about. And you will have that aha moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to just be me. And if
Yes.
people don't like me, they're not my people.
That's right. And people make assumptions on who you are, and that's not who you are. Even people ask me why I got into podcasting, and I said, well, you know what? I'm getting older now, and I don't want people to suffer like I did. And it's not to get attention, it's to get attention to subjects that people need to hear. It's kind of like you just want to impart this stuff as in a broad an audience as you can. It's not about getting attention, it's about getting people to pay attention to themselves and what might be hurting them, because you and I came to this profession through different avenues, but through that common thread of really wanting to help people. I always tell people, if you want to be a therapist and you want to control people, don't be a therapist. If you want to help people learn how to help themselves, then do be a therapist, correct?
Or not suffer in silence. I'm
Yes.
still like astonished when I catch my own stories in my head because we still have them as therapists. It's not like, whoa, I'm cured of all of that.
No, we have them.
I'm more mindful of it. I know what, the process looks like, but I think that I still am trying to like get this idea that you don't have to suffer. There's no unique ideas. There's no unique thoughts. There's no unique behaviors, yet we all think that something's wrong with us and that we're horrible and that nobody, if they really got to know us, would want to spend any time with us. And that is the way that every single one of my clients feel who sit on my couch. I just get to have a front row, like, I get this, have this beautiful exposure to like the vulnerability that we all have. And so I think that
Yes.
what you and I hope to do is like spread the word. Hopefully it's catching. You're not alone in this, right? But if you
Exactly.
continue to isolate and treat yourself like you're not lovable unless you're perfect, you are
Correct.
going to have a really lonely life.
Yes, and thank you for all of this today, because like I look at, like I tell people, perfect diamonds like a cubit zirconia is not very expensive. But a perfect, I mean a valuable diamond, a perfect diamond is priceless, but a valuable diamond has a flaw in it and they cut around it to make it shine, but the flaw is still there, and that's how we know it's real. So embrace your flaws and let your facets shine. And I thank you, Dr. Dana, for shining with us today and talking about people pleasing and intertwining that. And I'm so grateful that we had the celebrity conversation, because people really don't understand.
No.
It's the famous thing that the person's too fat or too skinny, but on the day they were the right size, no one noticed. You
Yes.
you
No, thank you for inviting me. You are so wise and so insightful, and I know that you're
very much.
bringing so much awareness to mental health by your podcast. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, and thank you for all you do. And people can find her. It's drdanamcneil.com, or is it
It's
just
just
Dana McNeil?
danamcneil.com. Yeah, I ain't
DanaMcNeil.com.
snooty like that. It's just danamcneil.com. And
DanaMcNeil.com.
we have also my relationship, SD relationship place, which is short for San Diego, is the website for my practice. And then we have a book coming out called D
Yes.
Spot Conversation. So you can find all that stuff on my site or look at
Yes.
us on social media, say hi.
Yes, I'm a follower, and I do love the D Spot Conversations idea. I think that's perfect because your podcast is great too. And it really will help people help themselves. I mean, that's kind of what therapy's all about. We're not there to control you. We're to set your boundaries. We help you set yours. So thank you very much for today. I appreciate it so much.